Ah. So people, this is Radu. Welcome to my channel. And this is Chukash. For being a very cheap beer, it's not half bad. So, cheers. And this is the subject of today's video. It's the wonderful KONICA HEXANON AR 50mm f1.4, a truly legendary and glorious lens. And I'm gonna give you 3 reasons why you should think seriously about getting this lens, and 1 very big reason why you probably will think twice about getting it, or even consider not. With that said, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this video. And just to give you a little taste, or to set the mood perhaps, I want to read to you a few paragraphs off of KONICAfiles.com. It's a sort of a encyclopedia of knowledge regarding KONICA cameras and lenses, and it's really, really well done. It's really chock full of excellent information. It's where I did most of my research, and from there I'm going to read to you a few paragraphs. Even though KONICA was Japan's oldest lens maker, it manufactured Japan's first photographic lens, the KONICHIROKU Hexar 10.5 cm f4.5 in 1931. The excellence of KONICA-made optics is due primarily to the company's exacting quality control standards, both at the raw materials sourcing stage and during production. Following careful inspection, small portions of each batch of optical glass were selected for further spectrophotometric and stress testing. Only glass which passed this testing was accepted for the making of lens elements. In the end, only about 30% of the raw glass supplied to the factory was deemed acceptable for further processing, while the usual rejection rate in the industry as a whole was about 40 to 50%. In the manufacturing of the Hexanon AR lenses, KONICA used different varieties of optical glass, some of which contained rare earths to produce the refractive properties needed in various lens designs and focal lengths. Once cut and polished, such lens elements were treated with KONICA's color dynamic coating technology and received repeated magnesium fluoride and cryolite coatings in combinations that depended on the lens type. These coatings, first introduced in the late 1960s and improved over the following decade, contribute to the flare control and color rendition Hexanons are renowned for. Back in Japan, for many years, the Japanese Camera Inspection Institute, the institution whose past sticker adorns every camera and lens exported from Japan from the mid-1950s to the late 1980s, used testing apparatus outfitted with KONICA-made P-Hexanon optical comparator lenses to assess the quality of photographic equipment made by all Japanese camera and lens makers. There can arguably be no greater testimony to KONICA's expertise as a maker of first-rate optics. Comparator lenses are expected to project the image of an object on a flat field of view with a magnification factor of 50 times, 100 times, or even 200 times, with the same dimensional accuracy at the edges as in the center, after which this magnified image is measured in microns. KONICA had 2 lines of lenses. The Hexanons, which were a premium, more professional, let's say, line of lenses, and the Hexars, which were oriented more towards the discerning amateur, let's say, a more budget-friendly line of lenses, which in their own terms were not bad, but compared to the Hexanons, they're in a completely different league. Therefore, this lens here, I even love holding it, but I'm not entirely comfortable with holding it for long periods of time, and you will see why. You will excuse my clickbaity, teasing behavior. It features a double Gauss lens design very similar to the Yashinon DX 50 millimeter 1.7 and the Super Takumar 50 millimeter 1.4. It features 7 optical elements in 5 groups. It has 6 rounded aperture blades which curve on the inside. I don't know if, yeah, you can see now. See how they are pointed and curved towards the, well, really the front of the lens. Its aperture ring goes from f1.4 down to f16, while the later, more modern variant of this lens went down to f22, being lighter, slimmer, and shorter, while losing the half aperture clicks. This is one of the reasons why I enjoy having this older variant, despite its size and weight, is for its half aperture clicks. It allows you to set your aperture at half stop intervals, and it can be really precise. It weighs 290 grams, so it's not light, but it's definitely not heavy. Its focusing distance is 45 centimeters, and its focus throw is a generous half turn, around 180 degrees. And I find it just enough for very precise focusing. And the focus ring is rubberized, and that makes for very comfortable and precise focusing. My copy was made in December of 1973. Yeah, I should mention a 55 millimeter filter thread, and I'll get to it. Despite its, I'm going to spoil it a little and get ahead of myself, but despite its excellent flare control, I use it with this Leica lookalike vented metal hood on a KONICA AR to Sony NEX adapter. This whole contraption, this is at infinity focus, looks like this. The adapter adds about 2 centimeters of length to the lens, but it's still comfortable and it looks good. The first, most important, by far, reason why you should own this lens and cherish it if you already do, is, you've probably guessed it, it's image quality. I told you a little about how it was made, about the quality standards KONICA has for its Hexanon line of lenses, but I want to get a little bit more in depth about it and tell you how I feel about it, how it behaves. First and foremost, image quality is absolutely superb. It renders really razor-sharp images with great bold colors on the neutral side of the spectrum. It's not warm, it's not cold, it's very, very technically precise. It's neutral. And colors have a way of being, I wouldn't say muted, but rather elegant. It's certainly vibrant. The colors it produces are certainly vivid, but it's not over the top. It's not oversaturated. It doesn't prefer one color or the other. It renders all images with great, bold colors. Speaking of sharpness, I want to say that this lens is supposedly, I can't compare it, but people have said that it's only marginally or ever so slightly less sharper than its f1.7 sibling, which some say is probably one of the sharpest lenses ever made by anyone. And if you were to compare images made by these two lenses, you're yeah, whatever. You have to take a really, really close look, because take my word for it, I have this one and not the other, but this is very, very sharp. Even fully open at f1.4, this lens is sufficiently sharp. Perhaps not enough for product shots, perhaps entirely not enough for landscape shots, but who shoots landscapes at f1.4? I mean, I can imagine you can, but should you? You probably shouldn't. Unless, of course, you're looking for a very dramatic and creative type of very shallow depth of field landscape. But hey, it's still sufficiently sharp. And if you're shooting portraits, and that's what you should be shooting at f1.4 especially, this lens comes into its own. It's absolutely spectacular. There's a certain glow to light. If you catch it in just the right angle, the way light falls on your subjects is really nothing short of magical. It has a fantastic, a spectacular glow. Not in the way you would expect for the image to be glowing from a very fast 50, that gooey, foggy glow, but more like an ethereal, magical, a very pleasant kind of glow, almost palpable glow. Like, I'm thinking of a few images that you will see at the end of the video, specifically where the skin almost kind of glows, emits light. I've said glow a lot of times, but it's really the best word I can find to describe the way this renders light in certain situations. It's especially flattering for human skin. It's sharp enough to be sharp, but it's soft enough to hide all those sometimes unpleasant imperfections, and especially if we're considering female portraits. They will not want to have every pore visible, and every wrinkle, and every expression line. This is really, really, really great for portraits. At f1.4, I've shot it creatively at f1.4, and it's really sufficiently sharp. Once you stop it down to f4, well, I have to say, even starting from f2.0, 2.0, opt means 8 in Romanian. Even starting from 2.8, and especially so from f4 and f5.6, this lens is crazy sharp. It's really stupidly sharp. I would dare say it compares with modern lenses. It's really, really sharp. I really have to mention another thing, and that's, I'm trying to find my words, because it's something I sometimes cringe at when people say, but I'm going to be guilty of this as well, and mention the film look. Arguably, you can say that shooting digital, even with an analog era lens, you can't have a film look because it's digital. But the way, especially on full frame, the way images turn out when shooting this lens really has a sort of analog feel, a very vintage, a very classic sort of look. I don't know, it must be the optics, it must be the coatings. And speaking of coatings, this lens has wonderful, wonderful burgundy, purplish, even orange hues to the coatings. This depends how light hits it. It's really a beautiful. It's being black and white, you will not see the coatings, but you have to take my word for it. It's really pleasant, if a little dangerous, to look inside this lens. Another thing about image quality, which I find surprising, is probably due to the first-rate coatings this lens uses, and probably also due to the rare earth inside the glass, is its remarkable and surprising flare control. It does flare when you shoot it directly into the sun, but what lens doesn't? But the way it flares is very pleasant. It's very aesthetic. It's very aesthetic? Hope that's an actual word. It's very pleasing. It's a symmetrical kind of flare, and it's not over the top. It's really, really nice. Chromatic aberrations are also surprisingly and remarkably well controlled, and almost absent at very large apertures. By large, I mean open, small numbers. So all in all, this lens has really first-rate optics. It's really fantastic in all the ways you would want it to be. Reason number dos. You say doi in Romanian for two. Doi is build quality. This lens is built like a tank, except the rubber focus ring, which I have to say, when mine came to me from Japan, it was loose. It slipped and I had to glue it in place. But except that, everything is metal and glass, and everything is built like a tank. It feels precise. Everything about it screams precisely machined parts, screams precision, screams quality, and really, this lens looks, feels, works, and handles great. It's really, really good. Motivul numărul 3. That's reason number 3. Is the cost. Well, rather, lack thereof. If lenses from other makers like Minolta or Pentax or Carl Zeiss or Nikon or Canon have seen in recent years a quite dramatic surge in prices, especially since the growing popularity of vintage lenses. The Konicas have sort of remained underestimated. They have kind of slipped under the radar. I'm not entirely sure why, but I'm entirely happy because that means they're usually half the price of their counterparts, and a lot of times maybe twice better. This is certainly, if not better, comparable to a Super Takumar f1.4 50mm. It's certainly sharper at wide open than that. And I personally got my copy for, I think it was $68 shipping included, but keep in mind that I had to pay another, what was it, 30? So roughly it's about $100 imported from Japan. If you're lucky enough to not have to pay import taxes, you can have it for, I've seen it go as low as $50 and as high as $200. So your mileage may vary, but it's generally, with a little patience and know-how, you can have it for very cheap, especially comparing it to its other brand counterparts. So go ahead and find yourself one. Or don't. And this brings me to the single reason why you probably shouldn't get this lens. And just to drag it on a little more, before I get into it, I want to show you how it looks mounted on the camera. This is mounted on my A7R, and while looking a little long, it's really well balanced. It feels great. It feels great in the hand. I think it looks great on the camera. It's really, really comfortable to hold, comfortable to use. It's not front heavy at all. It's really, really nice. So, the one reason, and I've kind of hinted at this throughout the video, the one reason why you probably will not want this lens is the fact that it's radioactive. Well, the glass is. As I've said in the beginning, and as I've already hinted a couple of times already, Konica used rare earths to enhance the optical qualities of the glass. Adding radioactive elements to the glass enhances its optical transmission properties. It makes the lens, the glass, behave in such a way that dispersion is reduced, its light transmission is greatly enhanced, it supposedly increases sharpness, increases the accuracy of the colors. So I have to be honest with you. I've stumbled across this information completely by mistake after buying this lens, because if I had known about this prior to purchasing it, I most probably wouldn't have. And in my frantic search for information on the matter, I've done quite a bit of research. The general consensus is that it's really safe to use. It has always been, and it always will be, with a very few specific exceptions. That being, don't break the glass, and if you do, just quickly and safely dispose of it outside your home. If you break the glass, careful not to inhale the dust particles. Certainly don't grind it up and eat it. That sounds silly, but don't. Don't tape it to your head and sleep with it for a few years. If you don't do any of these things, you will supposedly be very, very safe. I've had this lens tested by a friend of mine who's a physics and optics professor at a nearby university, and although it does emit radiation, and certainly above background level, according to him, as well as according to pretty much everybody on the internet, this lens is safe to use, safe to own. But despite everything, I have to admit I am not entirely comfortable with it. It's twice already, if not 3 times, that I've listed this for sale, talked to people about selling it, certainly thought about it more times than I've listed it. But every time I go along further into the process of actually selling it, I start to get overwhelmed with regret. I remember the images that it makes. I remember how it feels on my camera. I remember how it feels in my hand and how it handles. And I start feeling remorseful. And I start feeling regret about selling it. So obviously I still have it. I probably will hold on to it. But I do keep it in a metal box, just to ease my anxiety, just to be on the safe side. This is the way your mind tricks you into fearing things that are not really dangerous. So if you're easily scared by radiation, and speaking of radiation, to put things a little more into perspective, it's supposedly a lot less radioactive than a chest X-ray. It's supposedly a lot less radioactive than a 2-hour flight. It's supposedly a lot less radioactive than your granite countertop or the granite floor where I work at, where I work 9 hours a day, where I have been working for the last 2 years. But still, I'm a little anxious about it. But it also kind of makes me feel like a badass, because I'm thinking there's a slight bit of danger to using it. Maybe entirely unjustified, this thinking, but it's really not something I can control. And I think I've rambled on enough about this. If you're easily scared, you probably should not get this lens. But if you can handle this, if you don't find any reason to worry, and most likely you don't have any reason to worry, there's really 3 big reasons why you should have this lens. I'm going to end this and hopefully further prove my point by showing you a few pictures I've made with this lens, both in black and white and color. And I'm gonna wrap things up here. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here. If you've stuck with me all the way, really, you're a badass as well. Apparently the decision to make these videos in English has been a rather good one, especially, or at least considering the feedback I've gotten on the previous video, a video about the Industar 50-2 that will be linked in the description, and probably, is it this corner? Is it this corner? I don't know. In one of these corners. So, that said, this has been Radu. This has been the wonderful yet radioactive KONICA HEXANON AR 50mm f1.4. Until next time, may God bless you. Be well.
you.